All right. This says I am live. How are we doing this evening? Who do we have in the chat here? Feliciano is here. Thanks for being here. Let me know if you can hear me. Trying a slightly different mic configuration, so hoping that that works out well. All right. So yeah, live stream tonight. Let's talk about a couple of things. I asked my patrons on my Discord, which you can access if you become a member on the middle or higher tier, for topics to discuss in the live stream. And they came up with a few good ideas, and two of them I thought would make a good live stream chat tonight, at least to get us started until questions start rolling in. And let's see, those were someone asked, how do we listen to headphones like with a partner, listen with a friend, significant other, anything of that nature? So we'll talk a little bit about how to do that in a moment. And then after that, we've had that conversation. Someone else made the suggestion or asked the question: is midfi even worth buying anymore? And so that I thought was a really interesting question. And so we'll get to that on the second half of the live stream here as well. And then, of course, as folks are coming in, please put questions in the chat and we'll ask those, or I will address some of those as they come along. So let's go ahead and get started. So, topic number one there was tips for listening to headphones with a buddy of some sort. And there are several ways that this can be done. And there are a few situations in which that would be interesting. And it can get complicated. There are simpler ways to do it, there are more difficult ways to do it, etc. So, if you want to listen to headphones with a friend, okay, a significant other, doesn't matter who it is, how do you do it? I think option number one, the there are what are known as distribution headphone amplifiers. Now, they typically are professional uh, pieces of gear that have multiple headphone outputs on them, a single input, multiple outputs, sometimes with independent volume control and so forth, where you can plug multiple headphones in. Um, you don't have to go that route, and also, like, again, that's more of a professional route with pro gear there, and it varies in price, but those things do exist. I've never actually used one. All right, so I can't really name one or vouch for one that will work that way, but those things do exist, and there's something to keep in mind. Another fairly straightforward option is to get a headphone amp that has multiple outputs on it. It's not necessarily a distribution amplifier. It's just a headphone amp that has two outputs. I have one here as an example. This is the Lake People G111 Mark II, and you do in fact see that there are two headphone outputs on it here. Okay. So, like that, and they can be used simultaneously on there. And so, I mean, that is an option. The downside of this kind of thing is that you do not get independent volume control. So, if you're listening with someone using an approach like this, you're going to have to agree on how loud it should be. And obviously, not everyone is going to agree with that. It also, while not required, is probably recommended that you use identical headphones. Again, you don't have to, but if you use different headphones plugged into here, then you're definitely going to have more issues with the fact that you don't have independent volume control. Now, Lake People make some other amplifiers that have two headphone outputs on them. Most of their G100 something series does have two headphone outputs, but they're all going to be of a similar issue in that you do not have independent volume control. If you want to step up to something a little bit higher end, there is the Black Ice Audio Aries, which is like, it was a 2,800-ish dollar unit, somewhere around in there. That is an all-in-one DAC and headphone amplifier. It's vacuum tube based. and it also has two headphone outputs on it that can be used simultaneously. That one I have a very long review for it. I put reviews for both my G111 Mark II there and the Black Ice Aries in the description because I have worked with both of those. But similar to the Lake People amps, the two outputs on that one are not independently level controlled. So you're going to have to agree on what the output level should be. So that's two possibilities for listening with a friend here. Is a distribution amplifier, which again, I've never used any of those, so I can't recommend a particular one, but they exist. And then the other one is uh, um, an amplifier that has two outputs or more. Okay, let's see. We've had a couple of people join the chat here. Yummy tomato paste. Welcome. Thanks for being here. And Feliciano is still here. I appreciate all of you for being here. Again, we've had some more people come in. I'm first giving some tips for listening to headphones with a buddy, how to do that a little bit more socially. And then we'll talk about whether or not midfi gear is even worth it. And then if somebody comes up with good questions in the chat, which somebody usually does, we'll talk about those too. So please use that chat. Please remember to like, subscribe, comment, and all of that. Remember that there are super likes and all of that. That really helps me keep the channel going. Okay. So another way to listen to headphones with someone else, right? Two or more people listening to headphones at once. Honestly, it requires multiple systems, and of course that you've got to buy two systems. Now, arguably, the cheaper way to go about that is if you have a DAC that's say a balanced DAC, and then you have two headphone amps, one with a balanced input and one with a single-ended input, and then then you have independent volume control. Right now, the downside of that is typically whoever gets stuck with the single ended output on there is probably not enjoying as high quality of sound as the person using the balanced output, because as I have said many times, the single-ended outputs from balanced DACs is almost never as good as the balanced output from that same DAC. Okay, so there's going to be a performance hit there. But if you have a balanced headphone amp, and then you've got like a tube-based headphone amp that's single-ended only, that's another way to go about it there. Then the other option is just having two completely separate signal chains. The tricky part about that one is sourcing it. If you want to listen to the same music, then you've got to figure out how to distribute the audio signal. Now, my partner and I have for a while now, and it was her suggestion, and I love her for this, and many other reasons. Okay, she's like, we should have a headphone date, basically, because I have gear coming out of my ears almost literally these days. I'm able to set up two completely different signal chains right next to the couch in our family room, and about once a month we sit down together. I set up a couple of chains. We sit down and we each pick a headphone, and we just listen to music for 2.5, 3 hours or something like that. Really enjoyed those times. And like the trickiest part of that, because again, I have so much gear around, I can always build two pretty high quality signal chains for this. But the trickiest part about it is sourcing the music there, and so that we're both listening to the same thing, because she and I have a shared playlist that we both dump songs into. And then usually the day of, I kind of go through this playlist and organize the tracks in such a way so that we don't have something really light coming immediately after a corn song or something like that, to going really heavy to something really soft, or vice versa, and get that jolt going as it transitions. But Rune makes that really easy. And I recognize that Rune isn't cheap, but Rune is a way that you can select your a stream to multiple endpoints and use them simultaneously, and it works flawlessly for that. All right. And so as far as like hardware and software solutions, those are kind of my tips on all of that. But I am going to say that like the most important part I think of any, social music listening experience is that everyone gets a say as to what music you're listening to. Now, my partner and I have a lot of overlap in our musical tastes, and we both kind of grew up in the 90s, and so things like 80s and 90s music are both speak to us a lot, so we listen to a lot of that um, in these sessions as well. But having that shared playlist that we both contribute to as we prepare for these things, just makes the experience that much better. So it's not the social listening aspect is not all about the hardware and the gear that you make to put together to make it happen. Picking that music and sharing it with someone is really the most important part there. Okay, are my thoughts on that. Okay, let me buzz through the comments that are made here and see if I need to respond to any of them. Um, JTB is here. Hi, JTB. Thanks for being here. I see you can't respond, but I saw your comment. I appreciate you being here. Who else? Computer, sorry, turn that down. Let's see. Feliciano says he uses a G111 Mark II and enjoys it a lot. He says his girl and he typically have stereo sessions. She's not into headphones other than AirPods. Oh, so you listen with speakers. I am interpreting that to mean there, Feliciano. And sure, yeah, speakers much much easier to listen to socially for sure. Um, but if you're a younger couple with younger children or something like that, then yeah, headphones might be the way you have to do those kinds of things late at night. Um, and everything that I just said there, like if you combine a lot of what I just said with like previous podcast episodes and live streams about how to use headphones with like movie and TV watching, you know, if you're in a house with young children or you live in an apartment or anything like that, then, having multiple headphones to do, simultaneous movie watching there could also be a really helpful thing as well. All right. Let's see. Feliciano says, yeah, listening party. And it says, now you have to tell us what her favorite headphones are for these sessions. Okay. Let's see. She has been a big fan of the Susvara because who isn't? Okay. She's like the original one on that a lot. She has also requested the original Focal Utopia a couple of times, and she's a bit of a bass head and has really enjoyed the Hi-Fi Man Isvarna. They're kind of their closed back hybrid driver thing in there because it has huge bass on it. So those are the three that she has kind of rotated through the most. And it's kind of whatever the mood strikes her when those kind of things come along. All right. I'm not seeing a whole lot of more chat questions at the moment. So let me get the ball rolling on this question about is buying midfi gear worth it at all? And to answer that question, we first have to talk about, well, what even is midfi gear? Right? And then figure out whether or not it's worth buying at here in early 2026. And let's start with the definition question here. Typically, I personally have kind of considered um, the cost of a single piece of gear landing between about 500 and 1,000 US dollars. Okay, so call it like 500 to 999. Okay, somewhere fuzzy boundaries, of course, but in that range is like typically the mid-fi. Now, I am a little bit different than most in that I also kind of think that there's like that it doesn't immediate that the scale or the tiers do not go immediately from entry level into midfi. I think there's also like a budget enthusiast kind of tier in there. Entry level to me typically means the cost of a single piece of gear being under $200, right? And then from about 200 up to that $500 mark, there's a fair number of products in there. I kind of consider that, just for lack of better term, a budget enthusiast kind of term in there, where it's higher than entry level, but I don't know if it's necessarily fair enough to call it a mid-fi yet. Now, this is me at my take on it. I kind of stole the idea of a budget enthusiast here from like reviewers of computer hardware back many years ago when I was into building computers, and I don't build anymore because I just don't have time for that. Okay. But when I was building them years ago, I, would read on like Tom's Hardware and all kinds of websites like that, and they or like I was into gaming, so like the PC Gamer magazine and that sort of thing. They kind of separated out the true entry level from like the budget enthusiast to a mid range to a high end kind of tiers in there, and so I've just kind of personally adopted that in audio, and I think that fits, right? And so my again, my sense of what mid-fi means is kind of in that 500 to $1,000 range for a single piece of gear, right? So each piece that you buy in there would be like 500 to $1,000. All right. That's my definition. You're allowed to argue with me in the comments if you don't agree with that. Okay, JTB says some excellent mid-fi stuff out there. Shit, Gishelli, Headphone D1, then splurge a little more for something like an HE 1000 unveiled. Okay, yeah, and this is where it gets really interesting. The patron who asked this question, I think, might be onto something, but I don't think it applies across the board. I think the product type matters. Okay. For example, and JTB just brought up the head D1. And I think that's a really instructive example here. $800 for a headphone, I think makes much more sense than $800 for a DAC right now in early 2026. The other aspect of this is I'm specifying that's right now because the answer to this question, I think, is also fluid and varies with the state of the market at any given time. So, right here in February of 2026, like, where are we on this? And JTB is right. Like the head D1 is amazing. Right at $800, you also have the Hi-Fi Min HE 600, and there are other really good headphones that land in that $500 to $1,000 space right there. But I also, I said just a moment ago that $800 for a DAC doesn't really make sense to me right now. And let's look at the lay of the market and as to why I am saying that. You know, $800 to $1,000 for a DAC, you're talking about shit Bifrost 2, live micro DAC. There's the Black Ice Glass FX in there. That's really good. Socris has had a couple of models in and out of there. Just below that, you've got like the Cord Mojo 2 if you're willing to go with a transportable kind of unit and that sort of thing. And those are all pretty good. The problem with them right now is what's happening both under and above them in price. Um, I've already reviewed, like, have out there a public review of the shit Mimir, which is incredible at a starting price of $299. Okay. And it's really fantastic and it really challenges the sound quality of all of those higher priced units that I just named. Right. Um, so and it's not alone, right? My review of the Theo Warmer R2R is going to drop Friday. Publicly anyway, it's available for members on the highest tier right now. But spoiler alert, it compares to the Mimir very favorably. All right. And so that's a second one right there where it's just like, you know, what are you really getting over and above what the Mimir or the warmer R2R, or even something like the what's the one from A Post? The Merlin. I wanted to say Gremlin. Gremlin's the amp. Merlin's the DAC. Merlin is really good. Okay, that's a Gishelli designed DAC right there, and it's maybe not quite as good as Mimir on there, but it's very close. Okay, and so forth. It's just like the value proposition of DAX in that $500 to $1,000 tier, I think, have really been undercut by those that are landing in what I call the budget enthusiast tier right now. Okay, so should you buy midfi anymore? I think it matters what product type we're talking about. Let's see. I have more to say about that, but let me check in real quick with the chat here and see if there's anything that I need to add. Michael says, if midfi stops at 1,000, where does high end begin? Because things like Mjolnir 3, Aria Unveiled, etc., are not high end products. No? We talk about that here in a moment, but let me catch up on the chat here. Let's see. A to Deso, A to some of these names are hard to say here. Rocking the Ananda Unveiled and the Jotunheim 3 with Mesh card. Loving it right now. Good. But may look into a different DAC in the future. Yeah. Mesh DAC is pretty good, but for not that much more money than it, you can do significantly better. Let's see. Yummy Tomato Paste says that for him, the 750 to 1,000 is the sweet spot. Has Focal Clear and ZMF Atticus for hi-fi, but midfi IEMs get most of the work. Also, cost KPH 40s get more use than any over years. Okay. Feliciano says, good time for a midfi shootout for headphones. Not sure if I have enough of those around to do that or not, but I will take that under advisement. Let's see. Tomato Paste is back. i5 Griffin set gets 95% of the work for DAC amp. Okay. The Dodge Fan 9. Hello. Thanks for being here. Shit Modi 5 for single-ended. I think you meant to say only. You had a little bit of a typo there, I'm guessing. All right. JTB says, here's a question for maybe down the road. What exactly are the differences between R2R, ESS, AKM chips, and even the shit mesh filter DACs? Okay, yeah, it's a good one for down the road. All right, let's back up then. Michael asked an interesting question about where hi-fi begins, where the high end begins. And there are some fair questions in there about like what the different tiers are and so forth. Let me just finish up real quick with the should you buy midfi anymore? Using my definition of midfi is like that $500 to $1,000 point. We didn't talk about headphone amps in that category, and honestly, things like the Jotunheim 3 and the Asgard X right now make buying something under, more than them and under $1,000 a bit tricky right now, honestly. Kind of a similar situation to what's going on with DAX right there, in my opinion. Now, that may change a little bit for international folks over there. If you're not based in the US, I think, my understanding is it's still hard or more expensive to get shit gear overseas or in other countries than it is in the United States. So that value proposition can change a little bit in that situation. Okay, but I think headphone amps are kind of similar in to where DACs are right now, where the value return And that 500 to $1,000 range is not right there, not there right now. 6 months from now, there could be new models released that change the equation again. I don't know. I don't have any insider info. I'm just saying that these kinds of things are in flux and do vary in time with like the state of the market at any given moment. Okay. All right. Michael above said, if midfi stops at 1,000, where does high end begin? And then he says he does not consider things like Mjolnir 3, Aria Unveiled, etc. to be high end products. Um, Again, I have used the term in my reviews. And again, like I'm not necessarily the gospel on this one, but I have used the term lower hi-fi for kind of that like $1,000 to $2,000 tier. And the reason that I have done that is I think anytime you start getting into $1,000 plus for a single piece of gear, you're talking about someone who is very, very serious about what they're doing. All right. Like you're starting to get into that territory of like, borderline obsessive part of this hobby here. If you're buying a single piece over $1,000, most people, for most people, that's not just chump change. And you're putting a lot of thought and time and effort into the pieces that you're going to buy up at that price. Not saying that an $800 piece isn't the same for a lot of people on there, but like that $1,000 mark is a big psychological barrier for a lot of people. At the same time, I have also seen that once someone pushes through that $1,000 barrier for a single piece of gear, generally they are on the slippery slope and they are sliding down it pretty quickly at that point, frequently into more and more expensive gear. Does it happen every single time? No, but the lion's share of folks who like have gotten themselves to a point where they're comfortable breaking that kilobuck barrier, it's off to the races at that point, generally speaking. Okay, so the lower hi-fi designation that I'm giving it there from like 1K to 2K is a recognition that we're talking about really serious stuff that should give you higher performance than anything under $1,000 and usually does. Okay. Um, but also with the recognition that there's still a tier or two up, even higher in price and performance going up there. Right. So Michael, that's my response to that. No one is obligated to agree with me on those designations or classifications, but that's what makes sense to me. Having reviewed a bunch of gear and talked to people in this hobby, like that, I think that 1 to 2K tier is kind of its own thing, and deserves its own kind of classification there. And then for sure, anything 2K and up, I think we can just start calling high end at that point. And yes, you can keep going up and up and up, but we'll see, right? Okay, let me catch up on the comments here. Where did I leave off? Let's see. Bonarco6147 says, let me know let me A class amp from Japan. I'm not sure what you're referring to there. So if you could clear that up for me, that would be great. Um, JTB says Yote 3 is great. Completely agree. It's a fantastic headphone amplifier. Tomato Pay says, I want that Shanling R2R CD player. R2R is the way to go if you can do it. Okay. Yeah, I'm not one of those that is stuck on being like it has to be R2R or it's got to be, an ESS or an AKM or a Cirrus Logic or anything like that. I mean, mostly I care about what sounds good to my ears. I have heard really good sounding stuff of all of those types over time. So I think was it JTB who said for a discussion down the road about the different kinds of DAC architectures. That's a good idea. We can hit that in a live stream in the not distant future. We can flesh that out a bit more. Let's see. Feliciano says that he stamped midfi to be 500 to 1500 because of your budget. Yeah. If I'm not mistaken, the same patron who suggested this topic also just defined midfi as 500 to 1500 in the price range. The reason that I hesitate on that, on going up to 1500 on midfi, is because, like, again, you break that $1,000 barrier, and typically, again, in my ears and in my experience, you're getting something more. There is a line of demarcation there at 1K where things start to improve a fair amount usually. Okay, there are exceptions to that, of course, but usually things start to get a lot better there. I don't think that it's fair to lump a $500 amp into the same, you know, quality tier as a $1,500 amp. Like, those are different things in my view on that. You know, that's just my take. No one's obligated to agree with me on that, but that's just what makes sense to me given everything that I have listened to. JTP says he didn't like the Yote 2, but loves the Yote 3. Okay. It is a different and improved product from the 2 to the 3 for sure. And then topping an SMSL release a new DAC amp, DAC and amp every other month. No, not every other month, like every month. Okay. Like, or, actually, I think, we've been live streaming for nearly 32 minutes now. And I think SMSL just released 2 new products since this started. Okay. Yeah, they're busy. Let's see. Funnily enough, 8733. First of all, thanks for being here. And looks like he agrees with JTB or something I said. I'm not sure. Paul Gross is back. Hey, Paul, thanks for being here. And he says, sorry, just jumping in. So maybe mentioning something discussed. Won't the value, mid-fi and hi-fi category continue to move down as tech delivers better quality for less, as in your Asgard X example? All right. So do we have a downward compression of the price, or yeah, of the price categories of gear over time? That's a good question. My initial response to that, Paul, and I will take more time to think about this, but so these are just kind of initial thoughts that I reserve the right to change in the future if I need to. Um, is that, like, yes, cheap audio is getting good, and good audio is getting cheap, as the expression goes. That is definitely true. Um, I think a thing that is forgotten a lot is that expensive audio is also always getting better. Okay. And so the reason frequently that we get such improvement at the lower end of the price spectrum is because improvement happened at the higher ends of the price spectrum first. And in technology, there is a legitimate trickle down effect. Okay, where R&D and that kind of thing went into what was once the top of the line model, or a high end model or something of that nature. And then once a company figured out how to do it, whatever it is, whatever innovation they put in there, the next thing they often figure out how to do is how to do it cheaper and how to do it smaller. Okay, and that's what ends up trickling down to the lower ends of the price scale. But this process is ongoing. It's always happening here. And so, the top of the line of the headphone market, for example, is better than it was 10 years ago. Okay. Susvara was the original Susvara was a bit of an outlier in how long it was the top dog. Um, uh, but now the Hi-Fi Man has a successor to it, which is technically better. It is tuned a little bit differently than the original, so there's some people who don't like it as much for that reason. But in terms of like resolution, spatial presentation, detail retrieval, etc., the unveiled is better than the original. Okay. Um, and then you've got like Rallimanus out there, which outperforms Susvara, the original Susvara, and that sort of thing as well. So I guess what I am talking myself into in the moment is that I don't think that the already kind of fuzzy lines of demarcation dollar wise necessarily need to be pushed down across the board to define the tiers, because we're still getting innovations and improvements between $1,000 and $2,000, or $2,000 and up, and all of that as we go along. All right. Let's see. JTB says, I'm a big believer in diminishing returns now in this hobby. I went to the top of the mountain with high-end gear and headphones and quickly came running back down. Okay. Um, I see where you're coming from, JTB. I know I've said this before in other areas. There probably is a technical diminishing returns where like the actual physical ability of the gear falls off. All right. It's like it's not a linear relationship or something like that with price and performance on that. I don't know that there's necessarily a one-to-one correspondence or a linear relationship for our experience as that is happening. Okay. So that's one thing to keep in mind. With headphones, I've also said this before, you get above about $2,000 on headphones, like from $100 to $2,000. More, there's a fairly linear, I think. Dog just got home from dog sitting, so she just barked walking in. So I don't know if you heard that or not. Anyway, from about 100,000 or $100 to $2,000, there is at least a steady relationship between increase in price and increase in performance to my ears and in my experience. You get above $2,000 and it gets very hit and miss as to whether or not you actually gain anything significant sonically um, over that $2,000 price point. Again, that's my take. Not everyone has to agree with me. I have not seen as clear a boundary on that type of phenomenon with DACs or amplifiers. But again, that's my experience on that one. Okay. Um, Pharmastus 4565. It's another new name. Hi, thanks for being here. Says, would you say that the same pricing scale applies to tube amps? Um, I mean, at this point, probably. There's just less of them anymore. Like there are fewer tube amps than there are solid state amps at this point. Again, on the headphone side, like we have um there's that new Fozzy. I reviewed it not long ago with the GR70 or something like that, which is I think under $200. So I mean, by the definitions I have shared, like that would be an entry level piece. And then you go up a little bit more and you've got like the X Duo, what is it, the TA 26 or 66, or I forget the model number, the dark voice kind of clone kind of thing that's in there. And there are a few others. I think mostly the tiers hold up there. There's just fewer of them there. Let's see. Thanks for that question. Let's see. Where did I leave off here? The Dodge Fan 9 says, I just want to thank you for the reviews. You are welcome. I enjoy doing this. And then based on your vids, in part, I got a Valhalla 3 and DT 880 600 ohm. Nice. Okay. To complement my Asgard 3 in addition XS. Oh, also nice on that. One day I'll get nearer to the 1K tier. Okay. Um, yeah, you don't necessarily have to be in a hurry. I mean, the listening experience up above 1K does get quite amazing, but it's above 1K, right? Like I'm not completely out of my mind on that one. Let's see. Feliciano has another comment. Says reasoning is if I spent 500 or 1500 for be reasonable for the next level. Didn't quite follow that Feliciano, but let's see. Um Mephistopheles, I don't know if I said that right or not. Hi, thanks for being here. Says he tried to be midfi getting back in the hobby, but ended up buying the Uli, a Yote 3 and a Gungnir 2. Okay. I'm not sure what that first one was. Maybe it's a typo. If not, please tell me what that was. Um, Mike Brown, 2346, another new name. Hey, thanks for being here. Says I ordered a Yote 3 without DAC. Will Madi 5 be sufficient? Or should I upgrade my DAC? Plan on it in the future, but experimenting. If you're just starting out, I think Madi is fine, but it definitely will be a bit of a bottleneck for the Yote 3. Okay, Michael is back and says, not so much because inflation will largely counter a lot of that downward pressure. Manufacturing. Oh, okay. Okay. I think, all right. I think Michael is responding to Paul's question from above. Um, where he's talking, where Paul was asking, like, does the improvement of gear over time push down the price range of these tiers that we're talking about here? And Michael is responding that with inflation, that is a kind of a counteracting force to downward pressure on the gear tiers. All right. Let's see. Tomato Paste is responding to Feliciano. Anything I need to respond there in there? Don't think so. Okay. Then we have another name, Nuri Jessicatis. I'm sure I butchered that. Apologies. Does preamplifier? Oh, also thanks for being here because that's the first time I have read off that name. I appreciate it. Does preamplifier make sense in midfi headphone rig? Will it impact listening the same way as in speaker system? You gain more sound stage, better localization, etc. I have not used a ton of standalone preamps in a headphone system. I will confess to that. I will say that if you have multiple sources, okay, then you might want to consider using a preamp there in that situation to switch between them, particularly if you have multiple analog sources. Most DACs have multiple digital inputs, so you can manage multiple digital sources. But if you have a turntable and a cassette deck or any other analog source there, then a preamp can definitely be helpful with switching there because a lot of headphone amplifiers are very input limited. Very input limited. Okay. Let's see. Pharmacist says, makes sense. Thanks for your reviews. I don't really even remember what I responded to on that one at this point. Sorry about that, but I remember seeing the name. Okay. And you're welcome. Again, I do really enjoy this gig. I'm having a blast, so I am happy to continue doing this, and I hope it continues to be helpful. Uh, let's see. Some are going back. You nailed it. Oh, Mephistopheles. I hope that's the thing that I nailed. Let's see. We have another individual response to somebody else here. Yuli is the ETA one from CanJam SoCal. You tested it with CT. Oh. Oh, okay, that's what that was. Alright. I'm gonna need to get my hands on one of those then. Yes. Okay. The epiphany that I just had there, and thanks Mo for sharing this. Um, CT, which is the nickname for, let's see, Christian, is it Tomanero? That he's the person behind Niche Audio. Um, I did meet him in person at Can Jam, and he was with a group of other guys, and they kind of had a prototype. I think it was a prototype headphone on them at the time, which was pretty cool. And I guess that's what he's calling Yuli right now. And yes, I'm very hopeful that I can get one of those in the near future. So Mo, if you've got a connection there for me, let me know. I think I have their business card around, and I've been too busy to get to that, but I'm gonna do that because that was a fun demo I had on that one. Um, let's see. Stench Fox is here. Thanks for being here. It says your reviews have done so much for the audio community. I appreciate that. Okay, Tomato Paste and Michael are continuing their conversation. Anything I need to jump into on there? Doesn't look like it. Okay. The Dodge fan. There would seem to be some advantage for the guy with the Yote 3 and the Modi 5 combo to go up to Mimir since it's a balanced stack to go with the balanced Yote. Um, Probably not wrong. I mean, if that person can afford and the names are blending together here. But if that person can afford a Mimir, the Mimir and Yote 3 are a pretty fantastic combo. Uh Daniel San says, I'm looking for a close back. I've narrowed it down to ZMF Boca or Lyric or Meze Lyric 2. Which would you pick and why? Um, Michael, I think, has a pretty good answer to that. So let me see. Yeah, I'll just say ditto to Michael's answer on that one there in the chat. Pharmacist says, Mimir and Yote 3 is a sweet combo. I'm used to using the balance connections. Yote does sound better from the XLR out than the quarter inch. Okay, but the DAC thing is going to be using the input. I don't know that I have um, noticed a huge difference between the balance and single-ended inputs on the Yote 3. But I haven't paid super close attention to that one either. Okay. JTB, Hi-Fi Man with their price reductions on some headphones have brought some really good headphones. Like the HE1000 SE is now 1700 and used to be 3500. Yes. The the HE1000 SE, when it was launched, I think it was launched in like 2017 or 2018, somewhere around in there, and made it to like whenever Hi-Fi Man did their huge price slash, which was like late 2022 or in 2023, somewhere right around in there, they really cut their prices, and like the marquee slash was the HE1000 SE from 3500 down to 2000 at that time, and they have since reduced it again down to 1700, as JTB points out. And I agree, and I've said this on the channel multiple times before. Like that move by Hi-Fi Man to slash those prices of the HE1000 SE and everything, like, reset the headphone market. It really did. Um, because what was possible at $2,000 there because of that Hexie was huge, and forced the rest of the market to play ball on that one or get left behind. And within the next few months after that move, we got the double-sided tungsten, we got the Dan Clark E3, and we got the headphone 2. All right there at 2K and all fantastic. We've since had the Meze Poet, which I don't think is quite up there with the rest of them, but not far behind. I haven't heard the Abyss Joel yet. I've heard good things about it, but I haven't had a chance to spend much time with that one yet. But also right there at $2,000. But again, you jump up from there and it gets hit and miss because like if you saw my Dan Clark Expanse review, I did a direct comparison between the Expanse and the HE1000 SE, and to my ears, the HE1000 SE was the better headphone. Right? I personally preferred its tuning, but I realized that tuning preferences are just that. They are preferences. But on things like the staging and the detail retrieval and the texturing of the sound and the dynamic impact and all of that kind of stuff, I thought Hexy was better. And that was true when it was $3,500 versus the 4,000 Expanse. So then when Hi-Fi Man cut that price down to 2,000, it was like, that's kind of what I'm talking about. You get above 2K and it gets really, really hit and miss in the headphone market as to whether something is worth it going beyond that point or not. Okay. Back to the chat here. What do we have? Tomato pest, tomato paste, tomato pest. Sorry about that. Ah, we're gonna power through. Tomato paste says, I haven't listened to the ZMF Bokeh, but ZMF is on my top 3 headphone IEM companies. Zach is super nice, and the build quality is worth the price. There's definitely that pride of ownership that comes with ZMF and the fact that each one of their headphones is unique for sure. Let's see. Triumph MiFi, thanks for being here. Regarding preamps for head amps, a preamp, even a passive preamp, can change the ohms output to something more compatible with the head amp. That is one possibility, is you might get better impedance matching if you use a preamp. Okay, just check your numbers, see if that works out. The tricky part of this is like most headphone amplifiers are technically what you would call an integrated amp, in that they have a preamp and an amp in them, all in one there. Because like in the two channel hobby, on the two channel side of the hobby with speakers and all of that, if you have a piece of gear that is an amplifier that can power speakers, but it also has a volume control on it, at least on the front, like they typically call that an integrated amplifier. And most headphone amps are that, just with a headphone amp in them instead of a speaker amp. All right. Paul Gross says, this question relates to joining you as a member. Oh, okay. Is there a bigger advantage or disadvantage to joining via YouTube or Patreon? I think right now the better option is to join on YouTube. Patreon is a fine place to be. The only advantage that Patreon has right now is that it's easier to get the invitation to Discord to go through. The YouTube system on that is a mess. But I think for the user, and particularly if you want to comment on an early access video, the YouTube option is probably the better way to go there. Let's see. Michael says that he did not notice any real difference between the XLR and quarter-inch outputs on the Yote 3 either. We talking ins or outs? I thought someone was talking about inputs later. Now you're saying outputs. Mike Brown says, you guys convinced me, ordering Mir now. Okay, there you go. Enjoy. It's fantastic. Major Tom is here. Thanks for being here. And he says, I got HE1000 unveiled, Mjolnir 3, and soon a Gungnir 2. That's a nice pile of shit you got going there. Think I might eventually upgrade from Mjolnir 3, maybe up to 3,000. What would you be looking at or listening for? I did a roundup video of amps between about 25 and 3,500 USD late in 2025. So I would point you in that direction. I forget what it's called, but I have such a video that you can find there. I'll try to remember to link to that down in the description here in a little bit. But I'd start there, Tom. Let's see. Yote 3 XLR is definitely louder for headphones. Better choice for harder to drive headphones. Okay. Let's see. Tomato Paste says 31 watching and 3 likes. Come on, people. I currently have 27 watching and 18 likes. There we go. And we're about 55 minutes in. So let's see what other questions we have here. Mo says regarding Yuli, he's just a buyer, so he doesn't have the hookups. Okay. I have their business card in my box of business cards. I'll go dig that one out and talk to them about that. Okay. Let's see. Mike Brown says, would I suggest adding a Lokius EQ or adding Fork Beard? Not a big fan of apps. I like tactile objects. Um, the the Fork Beard EQ, yes, it's app based. It's going to be a little bit more flexible than what the Lokius gives you. The bands on and the Q factors on the Lokius are locked in, whereas on um the Fork Beard, you can set them where you want them. Okay, but you only get 3 bands as opposed to I think the Lokius has 4. Is that correct? Yeah. That would be my thoughts there. Major Tom says, oh, he's just replying to Michael on something. Okay. JTB backs me up on Lokius or Lokius versus, oh, he's going Lokius over Forkbeard. That's his one. Okay. Because he likes the physical tone control. Yeah. It's just going to be what you say there. Yeah. Tomato paste. Sorry about that little slip of the tongue there. it's, it's almost 9 o'clock my time. So that's my defense. JGal 450, thanks for being here. He says, for those wanting to experience a very high-end amp for cheap-ish, there is a China clone of the Vioelectric Nimbus at third of the price. I don't know what unit that is. Let's see. Good point, Michael. I see it. Yeah. Yote 3 doesn't have a 1/4 inch input. Like I said, it's almost 9 o'clock here. Okay. Feliciano says he added Fork Beard on Mimir because it's just 50. That is a fair point. I mean, $50, I think that's gonna be less than what the Lokius is. Let's see. Tom says, "Must have missed that video. I think you're the one I recommended the 25 to $3,500 amp roundup to. Maybe compared tubes to solid states. Did I? I think that video was mostly solid state amps. Did the Did I put the LTA Velo or MZ3 in there? No, I think they fall just outside of that price range in either direction. Okay. That's not a bad idea going forward, though, is think about like tube and solid state stuff. Let's see. Tomato Pay says, does the fact that I'm listening to this on my laptop connected to a JBL clip make me a bad tomato? Maybe. Just don't throw it at me, please. Let's see. Paul Gross is back and he says, what reviews are on the horizon I am most excited about? I think you guys will enjoy the Warmer R2R review. That was that'll drop Friday or go public Friday. Let's see. What else do I have in right now? I still need to get to the Yamaha YH4000, I think is the correct model number. That's that. I'm looking forward to getting back to that because that looked interesting. This right here just came in yesterday. This is the Odyssey LCD S20. So that's in right now. So much stuff. Let's see. I always blank when somebody asks me this. I got to look around the room for a minute. I got a couple more Hi-Fi Man headphones yet. I got the Edition XV that I've got to get to. Have listened to that one a little bit. Very different tuning than most Hi-Fi Mans. Much warmer tuning than a lot of Hi-Fi Mans on that one. So that's coming up in the not distant future. Got their Audavina LE still. There's other stuff around. Let's see. Stuff I'm excited about. I got a lot of different stuff. Oh, I have a buyer dynamic mod from Custom Cans that I'm getting to shortly as well. So there's some stuff coming up here, and we're also getting into the spring, or soon we'll be getting into the spring. And springtime, for whatever reason, is a big product launch time. A lot of people or a lot of companies release new gear in the spring. I don't know why. That's it's just a thing that seems to happen. So we'll see what comes up there. Let's see. Jeffrey Marshall, thanks for being here. Jeffrey says, I was looking for a power amp that's loud enough. Is one shit, or do I need a second shit amp? For speakers? That's going to depend on the sensitivity of your speakers and the size of your room as well. That's a very hard question to answer. Uh, hey, thanks, Feliciano. Really appreciate that. Let's see. Okay, here we go. Mo is back. Have I had ears on the Lyre 5 yet? No, I have not. Looking for something for a non-desktop setup, and that is on my radar. Nope, I have not heard that one yet. I will let shit know that I am interested, because I definitely am, and it'll just come down to their availability as to the timing on when I get one of those. Ancient Alien is here. Thanks for being here. Says, did I get the Gustar DR70 DAC yet? Is that one under the Gustar name, or is that the one that's under like the Autolytic name or something like that? Because I just no, I haven't gotten to it yet, but I might have a lead on one. So stand by if I'm thinking about the right thing. I have to go through my emails again. Guillaume says, thanks for being here. Is the Aria Organic worth 150 over an Aria Stealth with a base shelf? Is Aria Organic worth $100 more than Aria Stealth if you're going to EQ up the bass? I'm going to go with yes. And the reason being is that while the Aria Organic is technically a little bit brighter, it has a little bit more overall treble energy than the Aria Stealth, it's smoother. It's got better tonal balance to that treble. So it sounds it sounds smoother. It's not as sharp or as sibilant in the treble as the Stealth was or is. So for me, because I like hard rock, heavy metal, that kind of thing is a big chunk of what I listen to. That treble smoothness pays dividends for me. Even though there's more overall energy and brightness, it's smoother, and that makes a difference. That's my thoughts on that one. Okay. Let's see. Jeffrey is back and says Serwin Vegas versus or VS 150 speakers, big room. Again, it's going to come down to the sensitivity. I don't know what the sensitivity of those Serwin Vegas is off the top of my head. But my recollection is that typically Serwin Vegas are on the more sensitive side. And so you may not need a ton of power on that. That's my initial thought. But can always email shit and ask them as well. Like, give them your room dimensions, and tell them a little bit more about your speakers and ask them if they want one or two. The nice thing about shit audio there's a lot of nice things, but the people there, I have found, like, they speak with some hyperbole. sometimes, and all of that. And of course, the whole company is a crude juvenile pun of a name. Okay. Um, but they are not the kind that just is going to upsell you just to upsell you. They will shoot you straight on whether or not they think you can get away with one of their amps or if you need to buy two. All right. So I would just reach out to them on that one. All right. See, Galmer says he appreciates the answer. You are welcome. And yeah, Michael is right here. Liar 5 is not even released yet. That's correct. So no, I have not heard it. Do I listen to Pliny? Oh, he's asking someone else. Okay, never mind. And then Ancient Alien has, or someone says they have the DR70 and think it's very good. Okay, waiting for comparison to Mimir. All right. I might have a lead on one of those DR70s. I'll have to check. Dimitri58 is here. Thanks for being here. What do I think is better? And then nothing after that. Okay. Johnny Parker. Hey, welcome. Just ordered Isvarna open box. Couldn't resist. Yeah. Have fun with that. That's a fun headphone. And then tomato paste has got to bounce. I didn't know tomato paste could bounce. I thought it would just splat. All right. Silly pun there at the end of the night. All right. Pliny is a metal group. Check them out. And then good night. Okay. Yeah. So we've been on for just a little over an hour here. I will give you folks another minute or two to come up with some last minute questions, and then we'll start winding this down because I'm getting tired. I do appreciate everyone for being here. Thanks again to Feliciano for the super like. A gentle nudge to the rest of you that super likes are a thing, but as usual, like, subscribe, comment, all of that. Um, you're welcome, Mo. Thanks for being here. Have a good night. Uh, hey Johnny, you're the guy with the M Field dual stack. Cool. Yeah, those Flux Labs, I would like to hear those. Um, Flux Labs reached out to me after I did the review of their why am I blanking on the name? Mentor. After I did the review of their Mentor amps, and they were highly interested in working with me, but they're also in Ukraine. And I think we all are aware of what's going on there. So hopefully when their situation stabilizes, I'll be working more with them and appreciate that. Paul says, appreciate your ongoing efforts. Thank you, Paul. Thanks for being here. And then what do I think is better, Ananda Unveiled or Aria Stealth? Same price for you. At this point, I would probably say the Ananda Unveiled is the way to go. A more even tuning for one. Like, not as sharp in the treble, more forgiving, a little bit more dynamic impact, a little bit warmer overall sound, which I like. That's on there as well. Hey, thanks for the super like there, A to Daso, however you say that. Really appreciate it. Thanks. And then Johnny Parker agrees with me on the Ananda Unveiled. All right. Any last questions here? Yeah, Ancient Alien. I'll hit up Wang Fi to try to get one of those new live DAC amp combos in there. All right. I think I will call it a night then. Thanks everyone for being here. Have a great night, and we'll catch you on the next one. And yes, my FIO Warmer R2R review drops or goes public on Friday. You could watch it right now if you become a member on the middle or highest tiers. All right. Good night, everyone. Enjoy the music.